This session is now being recorded. I would like to start with the acknowledgement of country. So, in the spirit of reconciliation, Holocentric acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. My name is Daun. I am the Product and Marketing Manager for Holocentric Federal Government. I would like to welcome all of our panel members. Thank you for all your time today and to share your views and experiences working within government using our software. We'll jump into introductions. So I might hand over to Alex to start. If you could just introduce yourself and a bit about your background, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Dolan. Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thanks for coming today and taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and hear us have a bit of a chat about this interesting topic. So yeah, my name's Alex Dennison. I lead the Holocentric Federal Government business here in Canberra, providing support, obviously, through our software to federal government agencies to achieve operational excellence. My background is primarily consulting to FedGov. I've been at a few different firms, typically in the tech business lines, so sort of trying to help government navigate their way through, achieving their outcomes through the use of technology in various forms. So I found my way to Holocentric a few years ago, having worked closely with it in defence and sort of loved the product and the awesome outcomes that it was helping defence achieve, and an opportunity arose, and here I am. So that's a bit about me.
Alex, I might throw to Derek.
Hi, everyone. My name is Derek Renouf. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Holocentric. I work with the R&D group on the products and platform to make sure it's maintained and has new features, and our solutions teams can continue to use the product over time. I am one of the original founders at Holocentric, and I actually started creating Holocentric Modeler as a hobby years ago. So the hobby became a full-time business, and my vision and dream at the time was to create living repositories of information that can have objects and relationships and be able to visualize things and connect things up and sort of grow those models into all sorts of different areas, including business models and that. So that's a little bit about my background.
Thanks, Derek. I'll throw to Erin.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Erin Smythe. I'm the Managing Director of Evolve Capabilities. We're a boutique consulting company who reside in Canberra. We exist primarily to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make the efficiency of government all that it can be. We partner closely with Holocentric. We've been in this business now for 2.5 years, but I personally have been working in this space for 8 years and have had experience across other government organisations, but I've primarily been focusing in defence.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. And last but not least, Michael.
Thanks. So my name's Michael. I'm a director and co-founder of CharterTech. So we're a specialist chartered accounting firm which operates in the space where finance meets technology. So practically what that means is that we run ERP platforms and business transformation agendas for large federal government organisations, including Defence, Home Affairs and the Australian Electoral Commission. And I sit over the ERP service line and also our business transformation line, which is where our Holocentric partnership sits.
Thanks, Michael. I guess the next part of the webinar will be an open panel discussion. So we'll jump into the discussion now. As I mentioned previously, please feel free to pop any of your questions in the chat for those who are attending, so we can have a bit more interactive as well. So with the first discussion point, let's start with why is process management so important and why is it particularly useful for government? I might actually throw to Erin to start.
Sure. Thanks for the question. Well, firstly, every organisation has processes, whether it's a small family-run cafe or a mechanic down the road to a large government department, whether they recognise that or not. If an organisation is not managing their processes, they'll find that their practices are inefficient, and every time a staff member moves on, they'll essentially move backwards. And that's because a lot of the corporate knowledge is held within the minds of their staff. So they'll also struggle to understand who they are, where they are, and how to move forward to achieve their goals. So if you apply that to a government department whose role it is to deliver a range of services to the public, they've got a set of strategic outcomes they must meet, a workforce in the thousands, and they're all located across the country. So they also have like a history of change and transformation on a secular basis, where they constantly redirect their huge workforces in new areas of policy to get after the strategic environment where required. So for an organisation the size of Defence, where a lot of my background comes from, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of processes. So at that size, you really risk losing important information that contains your history and corporate knowledge. So simply put, process management will allow departments to understand themselves, where they need to go and consistently move forward. We've all heard the saying, like, reinventing the wheel. And in business, this usually means recreating something that's been lost. So we all recognise that that's a bit of a waste of time, and we can probably see that in our own roles from time to time. We'll come across a complex problem or just generally something we need to solve. And as we're planning, we can't help but think that there's no way that we're the first ones to grapple with this problem. So you've probably found yourself like searching for lessons learned or guidance on how to move forward, but often you find nothing. So you do the best with what you have. We spend countless hours creating a solution, testing, adjusting, and consulting before you finally implement your solution. And the outcome's probably great, but there are complex business rules that need to be followed to ensure the solutions remains as it was intended and sustainable. Even so, though, you can't help but like feel the fragility of your own solution, as you primarily need others to understand your vision and get on board with what you're trying to deliver. It works for a couple of years, but fast forward 5 years, you've moved into another role and someone else is now looking at your solution with a strategic change on their lap. So they do what you did. They look for guidance, they look for lessons learned, and if they don't find any, they're going to reinvent the wheel. So sadly, like, that's the reality without effective process management. And if you consider that type of complexity in a government department, it's not hard to see how it's so important. And, you know, it's no real wonder that they struggle to keep up with emerging technology and take a while to do so.
Yeah.
So just to put that into context, like the consequences of not having effective process management, I'll give you a scenario. So you can imagine that you're a captain in the army, and you've just been posted to Russell, the strategic headquarters, for the first time. You do get a handover, but it's short, sharp, comprehensive, but it's really quick. You move in and you've got many stakeholders, many responsibilities and consequences if you don't execute your role properly. So without effective process management, where's the system that supports you? And how does the department know that it's achieving its goals?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thanks, Erin. And I loved the analogy as well. I might open up the floor as well, just to open up the discussion. Did anybody else have anything to add to that or share their experiences and I guess their lens on this particular topic?
I think Aaron.
Sorry. I was going to say, I think it's important, particularly with federal government, to be responsive and adaptive to stakeholders. We see it in circumstances with organisations like, say, Services Australia or the Department of Defence, where you'll have some form of crisis, like the bushfires we've had previously, flooding. The ability to actually articulate how to do a task or who does the task, what system they do that task in, is really important to enable government to respond quickly. An example, I'll continue your military theme there, Erin. When we had floods a number of years ago, they were using military vehicles to assist in recovering people and assets from their homes, etc. The ability to provide quick and summarise training and procedures back to members of the military in order to drive vehicles, to even to be able to do things like how they do convoy orders to move military assets around the country and respond was really critical, because you can't wait 3 days to train somebody or to retrain somebody in order to respond to those circumstances. The ability for government to respond quickly is what really enabled organisations to assist in those regards.
Yeah. And that streamlined workforce, as well as consistent outcomes for the public, is a recurring theme that we hear feedback from our customers. So that was a really good one. Thanks, Michael. Sorry, Derek, could you?
I think it was important, and both Erin and Michael have touched on this, and that is when you can have processes in place, but you've got to also think about over time and people changing positions and changing roles. And so having things in place through sort of process management can help prevent degradation of processes over time as well. So whereas once it might have been effective, then people change, and you want to make sure that you get that continuity as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I might move on to the next question. Just a good lead into, as technology and best practices evolve, following on from Derek's point, how can government organisations continuously improve their systems and processes to address future challenges effectively? And I might throw to Michael for the next question.
Yeah, thanks. So one of the hardest things we see for federal government is dealing with the expedited time to market of technology. So as technologies are evolving, and as they are evolving so quickly, for government, particularly large organisations or even medium organisations, to assess what they do and to see how new technologies can be applied to those problems, to those processes, is becoming harder and harder, particularly if you don't have that fundamental understanding of the processes or the systems that you're applying to. A great example, very topical at the moment, is the use of generative AI-based technologies. What opportunities exist to use those technologies? Well, if we don't understand the processes that we do as an organisation, how can we have a meaningful assessment as to what could be impacted and where should such technologies be used? So really understanding those processes is key. Understanding the processes then gives you the flexibility to assess how those technologies and practices can be adapted and applied, and it also expedites the time to market to deploy new technology as well. If you find a technology or a process that has been changed, that's been updated, that's been released, and you want to know where can we use this? How can we use this? If you don't have the ability to look across your organisation and look into the organisation and see those things, that's really what limits you, and that's really limits your ability to address those changes in the future effectively.
Yeah, just before I open up the floor, we do have a question in the chat. Do you face a lot of difficulties maintaining and updating the processes over time? And what strategies can we use to manage this? Michael, did you want to?
So look, there's lots of different ways we can do it. Initially just starting from manual-based updates, etc. as well. So periodically looking through processes and reviewing it as most simple. Generally for larger organisations, medium organisations like government tends to be, processes do tend to move slightly slower over time. So it's quite easy to stay ahead of that. If you jump way forward in terms of future technologies, and I know that I've been working with some of the R&D staff at Holocentric with this, we're even down to the point now where we can use vision systems, actually monitoring over the top of processes running in production environments in real time. We can redact content from screens and actually build processes from vision systems now. So those technologies enable you to not only map business processes, not only update business processes, but also check for things like compliance as well. So if you have high risk processes and you need to ensure that they're being undertaken a certain way, you don't physically need to sit somewhere next to you. We can leverage the Holocentric toolset to provide a framework that says this is how we're going to review and maintain a process for this particular high risk process, and then we can actually audit to make sure that that's exactly how it was done. So a lot of these newer AI-based technologies, particularly vision systems, process discovery architectures, definitely can help in updating and maintaining the Holocentric platform, and we get some really good results when we see those used.
I just add to that as well from my perspective. Typically, like SOPs that are built in Word documents do notoriously go out of date because people who are in the jobs aren't going to see the need to update it to reflect what they're doing until they go to leave. And when people go to leave, it's probably not something they're going to prioritize unless they're told to do it. So yeah, it's very common that SOPs go out of date, but what I've found by putting those SOPs on the Holocentric platform and connecting it up to strategy and manuals and templates and all these other business elements that make it really useful is that we're able to take like the core purpose, which is capturing those processes, but connect it in this broader ecosystem that brings users back to it over and over and over again. So it's not just the person who owns it, who's got the SOP in their drawer, but it's actually like forms a part of the living ecosystem of the business. So it's about making it more relevant than what the original intent of the SOP was. And naturally, that's how this ecosystem evolves as it grows.
Yeah, also I just add there, it's probably obvious, but assigning key accountabilities for process and who's responsible and when, and sort of that underlying framework of making sure that you don't go into all this great work and map everything out and have it in a system like Holocentric, but then no one knows who's meant to be maintaining it and when, and things like that. So I think that's another key one, is clear accountability, which is critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Moving on to the next discussion point. And I think this leads on to the next question. Well, what are some key challenges that can hinder successful process management in terms of software as well as the actual service and implementing for government and large organizations? Might throw to you, Alex.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I guess the two different lenses there in terms of implementing software from a process management perspective, there's some obvious ones around data security or sensitivities there, and systems and ability to integrate into the environment and things like that, which you need to understand thoroughly, and especially in a federal government department, especially very, very sensitive and something that you need to understand completely before you get in there. That's probably on the software side, but more on the actual process management side itself and methodologies. I think there's a range of things. I think top of the head, I would imagine, from what I've seen, it's probably a change piece, like a resistance to change that you'll find, despite the fact that I don't think anyone would argue that it's important that you understand your processes and it's all documented very nicely and maintained and there and available and consumable. Naturally, humans are just resistant to change. So I think if someone's got a system, everyone has a system of some sort, typically, paper-based or Excel-based or email folders or whatever it may be, or in their head. It works for them or it works for them at the time. So it's this whole piece around getting the change in comms right to ensure that the value of implementing a system is crystal clear, so you get buy-in, because if you don't have buy-in from those that are going to be either using the system or accountable for the system, you probably won't get very far. So I would probably say change resistance is one. There's other pieces around the edges around, sort of return on investment, like a return on investment piece where, despite the fact, again, that you can, articulate benefits and savings, it sometimes can be difficult to get hard data around what does that look like. So being able to step both users, buyers, executives through, the use of, say, Holocentric, obviously in this instance, can sometimes be a little bit of a journey and can be difficult, which obviously prohibits our ability to get in there in the first place or to do it effectively in the first place. And then lastly, probably I would say sort of difficult and large organizations that don't necessarily play very well together, I would say. And, federal government purely on the basis of size, I think a lot of the time would probably fall into this bucket, just because there are so many different areas of government doing different things that don't necessarily have great visibility or insights into other areas or divisions, group services and things like that. It sort of plays into the change piece as well. When you start talking about end-to-end process, you've got to get these business areas to talk to one another and break down potential barriers and say, hey, this is what we do and this is how it feeds into you and vice versa. Just getting that can be difficult, but I think once you've got it and people are playing nice and playing together, the benefits are, you know, amazing. It just takes time and it's difficult. It's challenging. So probably those three I'd say are key, but there's a range of them that you could go through.
Yeah. And I might open up the floor on that one and see if there are other challenges that, you know, the other panel members have witnessed, or maybe even methods that they overcame that challenge with, and how to make it more successful.
I agree with the length of time, Alex, like that it takes to implement, especially if it's quite a wide scope. So sometimes, you know, the challenge can be the patience of the organisation to realise the benefits. And of course, like we all hear about like contractor fatigue and everything there. So one of the I suppose tactics that we use to get past that quickly is we look for like low hanging fruit, so the things that are hurting quickly that we can quickly resolve, and that's what I suppose a way of like proving that the benefits are here, and kind of making sure the organisation remains engaged as we go through that journey. We all are a bit impatient, especially when there is investment and promises behind something. So that's something that we do. We try and make sure that, yeah, where there's that low hanging fruit or something that we can resolve quickly, that we do.
That's a good point.
Great.
I think it's also that that we acknowledge that a lot of the time when we're doing these process management undertakings, it's really going to be key subject matter experts that we're talking to, and those subject matter experts are not there ultimately because they are that core part of that business process understanding. They really have that depth of knowledge. But part of the problem we can get into is if we continue to hit the same subject matter experts over and over and over again, we can particularly drain access to that resource for other people too. So particularly if those SMEs are involved in training or other aspects of change management as well, it's always just important to acknowledge those resources are of limited quantity, and that when we're doing these undertakings, you want to do it in a way that's professional, that's effective, that's efficient, but doesn't drain access to those resources for the stakeholders around them as well.
Yeah, really good point. Sorry, Derek, did you?
Yeah, another thing that can be useful is we've talked a bit about the subject matter experts and capturing detail. That there's another level that we can look at as well around reference models, whether it's capabilities or other things, so that different parts of the business, Alex mentioned sort of breaking down silos. What can be useful then is to get a high level understanding of the kind of services, the kind of capabilities that need to be provided, and then being able to sort of stock take on what different parts of the business, how they contribute to that. Then you can look at that sort of end-to-end processes within that. What that does is it helps you understand gaps in the business at a high level and get that understanding early on, so that you don't have to, you know, follow your nose and do all the detailed processes and then realise that, you know, different things don't connect to each other. And that can be another thing that can contribute.
Yeah, and while I have you there, actually, Derek, I'm talking about resources and maximising benefit. You know, one of the goals of process management is to streamline processes and increase efficiency. So how can we use process management software and services to enhance that resource allocation and to maximise the benefits and the services delivered to the public?
Well, that's just a small question there. Okay. Thinking a little bit about this, I think it's important to understand up front, because we talk about maximising benefits to the public. I think it's important that we have clarity of outcome of this in the first place. So it doesn't matter how efficient a process is or a service is if it doesn't meet the outcomes. So one of the things for process management is to understand before it's implemented whether, you know, there's a good chance of it achieving those outcomes and having some validation of fit for purpose on that. Whether that's looking at value propositions, outcomes, customer journey maps, these sort of things, because in the end, if that's going to get the right outcomes and you know, deliver what's needed, then if it's efficient and effectively implemented, then the public's going to get benefit out of that. So that'd be the first thing, sort of clarity of purpose and that. As far as resource allocation goes, then there's staff and systems and things like that are all resources. I do feel that it's important that staff in an organisation understand their positions, the roles and responsibilities. So if we make a start around that, that can help give clarity to how people work in context. And also we talk about compliance and let's face it, there's more and more compliance in place in the workplace. This also gives a discussion. It kicks off a discussion of why these controls are in place as well, and having processes and a model in place can help you understand, what policies it relates to and regulations and these sort of things. So people can look into it themselves as to why they're doing things. Now, this sort of thing then can help with employee satisfaction, which can in turn help productivity, because when people get clear about why they're doing the job and how it fits into the organisation, that can really help. From a system point of view as well, we can understand at sort of what capacity systems are used and where, through things like work instructions, and also just at a high level in terms of a map, you can see where systems are used. So if you are planning on replacing an ERP or parts of CRM, that can give you a high level understanding of that. So that does contribute to what resources and how they're allocated. Another aspect of this is the sort of insight that it can give you to make things more efficient, and having end-to-end processes in place can give staff that insight as to what gaps exist and where they might need to get help or what they might need to improve. So that can really help benefit delivery, because it becomes the system can improve itself, really. Alex touched on this before, and so did Michael, around things like monitoring processes and tracking performance, and that the process model itself can be a reference model then for understanding, what resources are performing and where there's any bottlenecks and things like that. So it helps with analysis later on, the potential to automate certain things as well, that can be evaluated. So finally, around this sort of area then is integration, and process management can help with integration of systems and tools, CRM, ERP, HR, so that you can reuse data within your organisation and share data as well. So it can become a sort of silo busting. Hey, if you've got access to that data, or if we can integrate with that, that can help with the efficiency of this process. So all in all, this contributes to a more efficient and effective resource allocation that can maximise benefits to the public, ultimately, provided it's targeting those outcomes.
Yeah, right. Did anybody else have anything to add on that point?
Look, I'd just say one of the areas where the APS particularly can get a lot of benefit from using these style of platforms like Holocentric is the ability to work across government agencies too, right? It's very common when we're talking about ERP technologies or reform technologies or customer delivery technologies that there is another area in the APS that does do something similar, right? A great example, I was at a breakfast this morning and I was talking to someone from the APS around how they do their temporary census workforce. And the comment was made, it's a bit unique. There's not really another part of the government that does this. And I said, well, actually, the Australian Electoral Commission has a temporary election workforce as well. And the question goes back, well, how do they recruit and get the right people? Great question. And it's something where, from a process perspective, that understanding can benefit people as you work across the organisations. We see the same thing, particularly with things like processes around travel. How do you do this particular travel policy? How does your system support and enable this? The ability to actually use systems like Holocentric to highlight across the APS, to actually showcase what is better practice or what is even practice full stop, and enable you to actually generate efficiencies through redeployment of platform too. Very valuable.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. We actually have a question in the chat for Derek as well. So the question asks, do you have a vision for the future for Holocentric? Where do you see the software heading technologically? And he says, thank you.
Well, just a quick question. I see, well, yeah, I see that in line with that living repository, we're looking to expand the platform, the offering, so that we can capture enterprise graphs of information that can be queried, updated through APIs, have different applications accessing that content in different ways to provide different views of that. To double down in many respects around things like workflow, review and approval processes that are built into the platform that ultimately people can hook into with events to say, look, when that's going to happen, check this or update this system. Michael's touched on some stuff earlier around some of that automation and validation of like evidence of compliance. Having APIs in place will help with this because we can hook into other systems. So we're looking to make the platform more extendable from that sort of macro system integration level, as well as providing specific applications that make it easy to capture content and view content, include dashboards and other things, using browser-based technology, and using mobile technology and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the future I see. It's staying true, though, to objects, relationships, views, all this sort of thing, and where we will continue to see this as an ecosystem then that organizations can include content in and relate to other things. In a lot of our bigger customers, we find that they've got systems in place. They've got lots of systems in place, and Holocentric plays a part of that. And it's an important part, and it helps manage relationships to lots of things, including process and positions and other things. So you can expect to see over time things like, sync jobs and other things for HR data around positions, and whether it's risk and compliance, other systems as well. So that's kind of the direction. More accessible, more open in that respect, and easy to use, and easy to contribute.
Thanks, Derek. Just before we head over to the demo, I might just quickly throw to Erin and Michael one last question, maybe some success stories that you've seen within government where you've used our software, maybe some case studies of the problems that they were facing and how we worked together to solve those problems.
Did you want to go first, Michael?
Look, I'm certainly happy to tackle one or two. Look, in terms of where we've seen really great outcomes, we typically see it where government organisations have the ability to really focus down on what we can be accepted effectively with systems or processes as vanilla. So you accept and adapt an organisation to a process versus what is actually core to change. So the analogy is always, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Well, where is the important place to start? And what we see a lot with Holocentric as a platform is when you go to do transformation reform or systems improvements, actually being able to drill down to where you start is really key. And we see it a lot, particularly with re-leveraging ERP technology. So your SAP, Gov ERP, you've got technology ones, one government environment, etc. The ability to sit there as an organisation and know, okay, we're going to put a technology in place or we're going to undertake this reform. Where do we start? That's the first part. And the second is, what do we accept as vanilla and adapt to? And then what do we actually then need to focus in as being different for our organisation? Because this aspect is actually the part that makes us different to other organisations. Being able to use Holocentric to really get to the bottom of those 2 points is fabulous.
You're on mute, Erin.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. I might use my favourite case study, and that comes out of Army headquarters. It was very much the first time that Army was looking to implement Holocentric, and they were looking to solve the complexity of moving through the capability lifecycle, as it was called then. This is a really complex, well-known end-to-end process, but it wasn't well known from the point of view of, if I'm actually on the ground delivering an outcome, what am I there to do? This was coupled with first principles review, because that's was around the same time. It was 2017, and through really it was just one modeler using holocentric software, but multiple engagement points across stakeholders who are experts in what they do. What was achieved was this really comprehensive model, taking through the government's strategy, defence policy, and aligning it all the way down to what someone, the example I used before, what a captain would do when they walk into headquarters. So the power of the model was really realised then, because the job was to go in and capture processes, but what the outcome was this really comprehensive program management system, essentially. It had all of the templates and exemplars, tips and tricks along the way, which is, just the ability that Holocentric gives you with that object-orientated software. So we ran a couple of case studies, and what we found actually blew us away too. We're able to improve time to effectiveness for staff who are using it by 75% across the course of 1 year. So what the question was how long did it take you to feel competent to make a complex decision when you're using this program? And the answer was 3 months, as opposed to if they were not using it, it was 12. So this was across a workforce of roughly 400 people, roughly all senior officers, and a lot of contractors, which aren't included in that 400 number. So we ran some quick figures on, the average salary and how much time that was saved and that was able to be reallocated and what the wages were. The number was too big to confidently want to share that with you because it was astounding, but it gives you a good sense of exactly how impactful this type of software can be when implemented correctly and when given a really great scope to work with.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin, and Michael as well, for sharing, I guess, your successes. So it was really great to hear from everyone on the panel, the head of our company, as well as the founder and CTO of Holocentric, and our trusted partners who understand, our vision and the value of our software. So for the next part of the webinar, we actually wanted to dive into a little bit about our new product. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Holocentric and the product that we currently offer in defence. For those that are not, our BMS is a platform that customers can use to develop tailored meta models, consumption views, and reports. So users view content through Modelpedia and create content through Web Modeler or Modeler. The meta model is highly customizable, although it does require investment to develop and maintain, as our panel have discussed today. Our software can create many-to-many relationships, providing the ability to capture an entire organization and provide insights of the business to inform change, as well as streamlining processes, since our software provides that single source of truth. So the BMS is highly configurable, which is really useful, especially within a large organization like Defence, with such complex needs and requirements. Some organizations, though, may not require that high level of customization. Therefore, what we've done is we have leveraged 20 years of experience providing our software to Defence, as well as large enterprise clients, to create a SaaS, so software as a service product, which is our new web app. So the web app is cloud-based. It's a process management tool designed specifically for business users. You can access this through a browser. You can discover, consume, collaborate on process information, and users can actually create and edit content in the web app itself. And power users also can have access to the Modeler and Modelpedia for custom reporting. All features are available out of the box with some configuration options. And the web app is actually created with the end user in mind. So it's very easy to use and create and consume and maintain, therefore has a much faster time to effectiveness in terms of the use of the product. The first version of the product was actually created for NDIS and healthcare frontline workers. So we have combined the ease of usability of that first iteration with the data traceability of the BMS and its ability to map the many-to-many relationships to create this web app. We want to share a little bit about our new product and show you the look and feel, as well as some of its capabilities. So I will start sharing my screen. Okay, so this is the front landing page. So you can see here, the branding is quite customizable. So we can add, for example, a consulting firm's logo here or a federal government logo. The images are quite easy to tailor, as well as some of the messaging. These hyperlinks can be linked to web pages or to internal documents or data points as well. Next, I'll actually jump into a process stream. That's one of the things that we wanted to showcase to you today. I might just search for a process stream that I can remember. Okay. So this here is a process stream. I think what's commonly referred to as an end-to-end diagram, we call a process stream. I'm just going to change the view here. So you can see there's a start and an end. There are these chevrons, which are stages of an entire stream. And what look like individual steps are all actually entire processes. So the benefit of tying these processes together within a stream like this is that you can actually follow a journey from end to end for an entire project of work. So I might jump into one of the processes. So if I click on the first stage, you can see here there's an entire process that sits behind. Again, I'll change the view just to show you what it can look like. I prefer reading left to right, which is why I always change it this way. You can see the different streams of work here, accountable figures as a start and an end, as well as being able to create decision points. Another great thing about tying processes to stream is, I might just make my computer, there we go, is that there's a handover point in the bottom right-hand corner. And once you finish with this process, you can move to the next process within that stream until the entire journey is complete. Another really good thing about this product is that these maps are auto-generated. What I mean by that is, I'll actually show you what that might look like when I create a new process. If I add a new step, and let's say it's performed by an EL1, for example, let's save that. You can see that new step has been inserted here and the map is now auto-generated. You can also change the sequence. The reason that we did this is that process creators we found, so people like business analysts or consultants, for example, spend a lot of their time actually focusing on the visual aspects of a process rather than being able to focus on the content. So now creators can focus on creating the process itself, and you can let our interface format that for you, which is really cool. The next part of this that I'll show you is all of that data that sits behind a process. So you can have the option just to have it as simple as this for day-to-day use and tie a bunch of data behind it for that many-to-many relationship. Each process and individual steps within a process can be tied to accountable figures, dependencies, different documents, business areas, risks, governing regulations, things like that. So you can see how easy it is to create these processes, as well as tying back all of those relationships behind. So the more data an organization invests to build out, the more value it will bring to the organization. So for example, day-to-day operations, ensuring that the whole workforce are following a single source of truth to provide consistent outcomes for the public, for example. All the way to understanding the current state of a business, its dependencies, risks, and using the visuals of our data to inform transformation. So you can view exactly which processes or business areas are using a certain IT system, like Derek mentioned before, which parts of the organization will be affected if that system will be replaced by a new one, or if there are policy changes, the organizations can identify all those that own parts of the policy, who will be affected or need to be consulted or informed. So this really is a living digital version of an organization rather than static documents like other process mapping or other process management solutions out there. And our product is easy and intuitive to use and maintain. So that was a very quick demo of our product. I'll stop sharing now. So I just wanted to say a really big thank you to all of those on our panel for sharing your insights today. And thank you to all those who attended. Please do keep an eye out for our other upcoming events. This will be one of many online as well as in person. Like I mentioned, this was a very small snippet of our new product's capabilities. So if you have any questions following this webinar, or you'd like a more detailed demo or a discussion, please feel free to reach out to me or to Alex. And we also have our Holocentric FedGov email that I'll pop into the chat now. While I do that, I'll hand over to Alex to close the webinar. So thanks very much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. And yeah, I'll just echo what Dawn has said. Thanks to everyone for coming. Certainly thanks to Erin and Michael, some of our closest partners for coming along and speaking, as well as obviously Derek, our CTO, Dawn for putting it together, and for all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and listen to us and see a sneak peek of our new product. Again, if you want to chat further about anything we've discussed today, certainly about the new product, existing product, or anything at all, feel free to reach out. Always happy to have a chat. And yeah, we'll be trying to do a few more of these and sort of have a bit more community engagement and get some messaging out there as to sort of where we're going, and as well as discussing just process management and things that and challenges that we're seeing in government in general. So yeah, just look out for our posts on LinkedIn or whatever it may be, and we look forward to seeing you all at the next one.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.